This is Tall Tale TV, your podcast for sci-fi and fantasy short stories. As Good as Dead, written by John Mara, performed by Chris Herron. On a secluded street in a small New England town, a black hearse pulls into Walter Nelson's driveway, and next door, Paddy O'Haggerty's favorite night of entertainment begins. "Ah, Nelson looks pretty good over there," O'Haggerty says to his wife Fiona. "For a dead man." Short and portly, Paddy clambers up onto the kitchen counter. Then, red-faced from the ascent, he angles a pair of binoculars just right to steal a peek out of the window of this, Walter Nelson's 10th annual resurrection. "What's dead should stay dead, Paddy. So the nuns taught us back in country Cork." Fiona crosses herself twice. "For 10 years, bejesus, Mr. Nelson's kept St. Peter waiting at his golden gate. Why, the old man thinks he's Lazarus." The O'Haggertys migrated, or beat feet is more like it, out of Ireland and to Boston 10 years ago, after they were chased from a Cork monastery and convent for a few fleshy transgressions of their respective divinity codes. Since then, as penance, the pious duo has concerned themselves with the moral turpitudes of others in their adopted land. The O'Haggertys made one exception to their calling, however, when they overlooked the Nelsons' trespass of the Lord's inviolable boundary between life and death. "After all, who in the Lord's flock hasn't wandered from the church's narrow path?" Fiona divined. In truth, when they got wise to Mr. Nelson's deadly homecomings, the O'Haggertys vowed to keep their mouths shut in exchange for the Nelsons' rhubarb patch. Under the heavenly covenant, Walter Nelson maintained immortality, and Paddy O'Haggerty scored eternal rhubarb pie. In the Nelsons' driveway, the mortician, sailing under the banner of Morty, opens the rear door of the hearse with the affected grace of a valet. Walter Nelson climbs out of it, dressed in the same dark suit and blue silk tie he wore at his funeral. The red rose Morty stuffs between Walter's fingers is the only fleshy thing about the dead man. This year, Walter's skin is a shade paler, and his hair a tone whiter. His vision has deteriorated too, but Mort may have grabbed the wrong glasses out of the shoebox at the funeral home. "We're each entitled to one ride in a hearse, Fiona," Paddy says over the binoculars. "And here's Nelson on ride number 10. That son of a bitch bounces back like a dead cat." "Stop your goddamn swearing, bejesus," Mrs. O counsels as she brandishes a tin baking sheet. "Or you'll be getting your entitled ride aside Nelson tonight." Fiona packs a wallop that belies her 90 pounds. She's bedecked in hair curlers, and the yellowed housecoat she wears looks like one draped over a coat rack. Outside, Walter Nelson, a bit stiff from the ride, lumbers up the steps and through the front door of his Victorian-style home. The door opens into a finely appointed dining room, where the Victorian furniture and wood floor are clean and polished, and the fireplace crackles. Walter spots the cremation urn, his, that adorns the mantel. "There I am." He snickers at the ruse. The dining room table holds 2 silver place settings and a candelabrum. Nelson's favorite meal steams on hot plates. Carrots, mashed potatoes, and of course, roast beef. Rare. The dinner was arranged by Gertie, the Nelsons' live-in housekeeper for 15 years. Gertie moved out of the house 10 years ago when Mr. Nelson died, but she returns every year to fix the Nelsons' anniversary dinner. Next year, though, the dinners will shift to her apartment, on account of what happened to Mr. Nelson 2 months ago. Feeling his collar, Nelson prudently takes the seat further from the fireplace. Mort seals Walter's face and hands every year with wax as a preservative, and last year's wax melted and congealed on his white collar, the victim, no doubt, of Walter having chosen the warmer seat. As Walter pours 2 glasses of Brunello wine, his wife Grace sashays down the curving staircase and into the dining room. Elegant in a red dress and white gloves, her jewelry sparkles when it meets the candlelight. This year, her hair is black, not gray. "Dyed?" Walter wonders. "Oh, thank you, darling. It's so good to see you again." She takes the red rose. With lips pursed for a kiss, Grace opens her arms for a warm embrace. "No touching!" Nelson recoils. "Mort says after 10 years, one squeeze could break me to pieces. And he means it literally, Grace. He says I should have a label that reads, 'Fragile.'" Mrs. Nelson sits down instead. "Sorry, darling. I lost my head." "I'm worried about losing mine." Then Nelson notices another change in his wife as the dim candles flicker across her face. No makeup. Her skin looks glossy. "So, Grace, tell me about the past year while I've been away." With the carving knife, Walter slices the wriggling roast beef. Next door, Patty O'Haggerty shifts the binos from the Nelsons' dining room window to some faster action in the adjacent kitchen. There, another roast beef is wriggling. This one a rump roast, raw, in the form of Gertie's rosy bottom. Gert sits atop the kitchen counter, where she was plunked by the ever-helpful mortician. "Has Gertie started cooking over there, Patty?" Fiona says. "I'd say so, love. She'll be needing the oven vent before long." "That Gert's always been on the cheeky side." "Looks like that's the side she's on now." Patty catches the reflection from the mirror in the Nelsons' kitchen. "Yup, there it is." The Gertie Morty annual kitchen tryst began 10 years ago with flirtatious eating, with sexual innuendos of raw fruits and vegetables. Over time, the 2 vegetarians became carnivorous. 10 years on, it's an all-out food fight. Fiona takes a rhubarb pie out of the oven. "I'll bet they're having the roast beef again, Patty," Fiona says. "Roast beef in the dining room and the kitchen both." Patty wipes sweat from the lenses of the binoculars. "Except in the kitchen, it's that mortician fella working awful hard at the slicing." When Mrs. O brings her husband a piece of rhubarb pie, she finds him contorted on the counter. "What are you all twisted up for, Patty?" "The Virgin Mary is blocking me line of sight." "It's a divine intervention, no doubt." "Damn, that Gertie's showing off some fine cupcakes there too." "Cupcakes? I thought she makes the soufflé," Fiona says. "I wish she'd bring a warm piece of it over here sometime." "Oh, so don't I, love. So don't I." Kneading the crick in his neck, Patty hands Fiona the binoculars. "Here, hold these." Like a chubby gymnast dismounting a pommel horse, he leaps from the counter and rushes outside. Fiona looks through the binoculars. "Aw, how sweet, the 2 of 'em," she says while panning the dining room scene. Outside, Patty drags the life-sized statue of the Virgin Mary, careful not to rake his hands across the Virgin's stony breasts. Mary smiles sublimely as her heels furrow the ground, pulled by Patty with strength neither she nor Mrs. O knew he had. Fiona moves the binoculars into the void Mother Mary leaves behind. "Oh, good Jesus, Mary and Joseph!" Fiona hyperventilates as she crosses herself 3 times. "I'll be rinsing me eyes out with the holy water come Sunday, Mr. O'Haggerty," she says as Patty hustles back into the kitchen. "And you nearly wearing a priest's collar." "Do you think that mortician fella would put me to work as a driver?" Patty grabs the binoculars. "What did I miss?" Fiona whacks Patty with the baking sheet. But with the meat-eaters next door in a full gallop, Patty is oblivious to the sting. "Now why can't we get some of that over here, I ask ya, Fiona?" Every year, he lobbies for an amendment to the terms of their matrimonial covenant, usually when the shenanigans in the Nelsons' kitchen reach a crescendo. "Is it the souffle you're after, Patty? It's the rhubarb we serve up here. Isn't that good enough for ye?" "The rhubarb would be just fine, love, if we could make it tart, not sweet. The fellas at the club say it's good tart, every now and then." But Fiona doesn't hear the suggestion to spice up the marital menu. She's rummaging the kitchen closet in an all-out search for the second pair of binoculars. Back in the dining room next door, the scene is more tranquil. Delaying permanent death, Walter cherishes the 1 hour of renewed life Morty grants him every year. He spends the precious time on dinner with his wife, Grace. After their marriage, Grace taught kindergarten for 40 years until she retired 5 years ago. A church deacon, volunteer librarian, and president of the garden club, Grace was satisfied with a simple, private life. She doted over their only child and let Walter stand in the spotlight. With time short, Walter knew to skim only the high points of the life he left behind. "Tell me all about Walter Jr., Grace." He got word that he passed the bar exam on his wedding day. Oh, I wish you could have been there. Walt and his bride were as handsome as you and I on the day we were married." Walter moves the candelabrum to hide his misty eyes. "There's bound to be a new baby to tell you about this time next year, Walter. I wish you could see them."
"I can't see anyone but you, Grace. Mort says emotional strain shortens the hours I have left. Besides, if the FDA finds out I'm injecting an unapproved serum, it's game over."
Before he retired, Walter Nelson headed research at a Boston biotech firm, where he was working on a serum to bring the dead back to life, if only briefly. But the CEO shuttered the clandestine project on ethical grounds after a resurrected cat escaped the lab, streaked a company picnic, and jumped into the lap of his mortified granddaughter. The serum was destroyed, but Walter, on the sly, stored 2 vials on ice. When he turned 70, Walter was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he called Morty, a childhood friend. Walter thawed the serum and trained Mort on every aspect of bringing him back to life, briefly, once a year. Morty learned how to suspend Walter's body in a liquid nitrogen tank and how to mix and inject the life-giving serum. As cover, Morty faked Walter's cremation. The urn on the mantel supposedly holds Nelson's remains, but a faint cigar aroma wafts from the urn at close range. Gertie was enlisted in the death-defying scheme too. Before Walter semi-died, he settled Gert with an annuity to cover payments to Morty of $50,000 per year, and to herself of $25,000 per year. The annuity was stretched to pay out for 20 years, equal to 20 doses of available serum. No wonder Morty was doing his level best in the kitchen to ingratiate himself with the keeper of the purse. Nelson refills the wine glasses. Checking his watch, he turns the conversation from Walt Jr. to Grace.
"How are things in the garden club, dear?"
"The same." Grace looks away, suddenly subdued.
"And your golf handicap?"
"No change there either." Nelson squints and leans towards Grace.
"What are you doing to your hair? There's not a single gray."
Grace fidgets and adjusts her wig. Nearly a year ago, radiation treatments robbed Grace of her hair. 2 months ago, cancer robbed Grace of her life, but not fully. She decided to hide her death from Walter and to split his 10 years of remaining serum doses 50-50. That'll give Walter and me 5 more hours and 5 more dinners together. Walter would want it that way, she reasoned. She arranged for Morty to simply replicate for her what he had done for Walter, and to drop her off at the house for dinner 10 minutes early. A second cremation urn, this one tucked away on a side table, lends proof to Morty's execution of his double duties. But the new arrangement would cost Grace. Both Morty and Gertie insisted on a doubling of their annual fee. "You can't take it with you," they reminded Grace. Grace had little negotiating power. The situation for her was literally do or die. In the end, Grace deemed the double payments a worthy investment. Back in the O'Haggerty's kitchen, Paddy again has himself in a twist on the counter. "Can you see all right there, Paddy? What's going on now?" Mrs. O says as she takes a rhubarb pie out of the oven. "Ugh, that mortician fella is a pig. Didn't I tell you, Paddy, about the morals in this God-forsaken country?" Fiona says. "We'd be heading back to Cork, I'll tell you, if St. Brigid's Parish hadn't banned the both of us. He's got the poor woman buckled over the butcher block now. He's angling for another slice of that rump steak by the looks of it." "Let me see those," Fiona says as she grabs the binoculars. "Oh, dear Jesus, can it be? I've never seen the likes of it." "Neither have I, but I'd sure like to," Paddy says. "That glass must be double-jointed." As the O'Haggertys wrestle for control of the binoculars, Mort and Gert finish off their second helping. Then they put themselves and the kitchen back in order. "I've been thinking, Morty. Here I am sitting on an annual annuity of $50,000. You're sitting on an annual annuity of 100,000, Gert says, lighting a cigarette. "We ought to merge." "Isn't that what we've been doing, dear?" Morty says. He gives Gert a squeeze and then peeks into the dining room. No, I'm talking about a business consolidation. Our annuities flow whether you inject Walter and Grace or not, whether I serve dinner in there or not." "But I'm tied to the two stiffs. They're floating in a liquid nitrogen tank in my basement." "Cremate the two of them for real. Then sell the tank. Sign over the funeral home to your son. Retire, Morty. With $150,000 combined, we can be in Boca Raton by next week and stay there for good." "You're right, Gert. They're out of gas anyway." "Right. What's 5 hours more or 5 hours less? They're as good as dead." "Yeah. It's our turn to live large." In the dining room, Walter and the serum are indeed wearing down. "Goodbye, dearest. Until next year." He pockets the front tooth that falls into his lap and, forlorn, blows Grace a kiss through the gap it left behind. Morty helps Walter down the steps and back into the hearse. When Mort drives away, the curtain closes on Paddy's perennial amusement. A moment later, probing inside the refrigerator, Paddy doesn't see Grace decamp the Victorian and join Gertie in her Honda Civic. This year, the Honda trails 5 minutes behind the hearse, so the semi-dead Grace can follow her husband into the liquid nitrogen. 2 hours later, Paddy O'Haggerty changes into pajamas and plops onto the couch in the den. With eyes closed, he recounts an exciting day like a 10-year-old on Christmas night. Visions of cherry-topped cupcakes dance in his head, and he wonders if a hot soufflé will ever find its way into the O'Haggerty household. Just then, the Honda Civic careens up the street and screeches into the Nelsons' driveway. Fiona tiptoes to the kitchen window with the binoculars. She sees Morty jump out of the Honda, wearing a tropical shirt, khakis, white shoes, and a belt to match. Gert follows, wearing a tennis skirt, sneakers, and a sports top. She holds onto a Panama sun hat that misbehaves in the breeze. Nice hat, Fiona thinks. She traces Mort and Gert as they race inside the Victorian, each carrying a cremation urn. Morty exchanges his urn with the one on the mantel, and Gert exchanges hers with the one on the side table. Then they race outside with the two urns. Fiona gasps in disbelief at the blasphemy that unfolds next. In the backyard, Mort and Gert each arc a stream of ashes out of their urns, as though they're emptying 2 cigarette ashtrays. Oh, 'tis a sacrilege! Fiona shields her eyes and crosses herself 4 times. First the counter, then the butcher block, and now this? What are they doing, the godless heathens? When Fiona dares look up, the idolatry is somehow getting worse. A cloud of discarded ashes are drifting earthward, alighting on the hollowed rhubarb patch. Fiona shuffles outside to intercept the 2 reprobates on their way back to the Honda. Who in God's creation do you have fertilizing me rhubarb patch? Oh, Mrs. Haggerty, it was nothing but cigar ashes from them urns, Morty says, looking up and down at the pie-stained housecoat. Cigars? What do you take me for, mister? And what might you be leering at? Fiona tightens the wrap of her housecoat. That's right, Fiona. Cuban cigars, too, Gertie adds. Nothing but the best for them Nelsons. To placate Fiona for garden infringement, Morty decorates each of the 2 empty urns with a red rose and places them on either side of the Virgin Mary. Then he hangs the Nelsons' house key on the 2 fingers the Virgin has raised in a blessing. Slack-jawed, Fiona endures the pagan ritual in stunned silence. Bye now, Mrs. O'Haggerty, Gert says. We have a flight to catch in an hour. Rethinking her unruly headwear, Gert sails the Panama sun hat onto Mother Mary's head like a ring-toss yard game. Bingo! With eyes agog, Fiona watches the 2 miscreants speed away in the Honda, her mind forever altered. What's the rumpus about out there? Paddy says from his headquarters on the couch when Fiona returns. I've been speaking to them 2 kitchen contortionists. What did they say, love? Oh, they had plenty to say, Mr. O'Haggerty, and I'll tell you this. They've made a different woman out of me. There'll be no more rhubarb pie in this household. And why not, Fiona? Because from this day forward, Paddy, we're switching to soufflé. Soufflé? His domestic outlook apparently improving, Paddy leaps from the couch. In the kitchen, he slides his thick arms around Fiona's waist. Hot soufflé, he says, with one eye on the counter and the other on the butcher block. You're not double-jointed now, are you, lass? Fiona reaches around Paddy, too, but to grab the baking sheet on the counter. Keep your hands off me, soufflé, she says, and the bite of the baking sheet punctuates her request. Freed of Paddy's meat hooks, Fiona escapes for a warm soak in the tub, there to reflect on all she's seen and heard on this momentous day. Paddy, with feathers stiffened from the day's culinary exhibition, follows 5 minutes behind. He finds Fiona's housecoat hanging on the bathroom doorknob. Ever the optimist, he knocks, and is greeted with the promising words, "Oh, Paddy, I knew you'd be coming along." As he turns the knob, though, the siren within adds, "That's why the door's locked." Paddy tramps back to the kitchen and looks out the window. Outside, the Virgin Mary, modeling headwear, dangles a set of keys like a curbside valet. Nice hat, he thinks. Otherwise, things are dead at the Victorian next door. He sits at the kitchen table and wonders if the taste of a rump roast or hot souffle will ever cross his lips. For now, Paddy settles for a slice of the tamer fare the good Lord ordained for him. He finishes the last piece of cold rhubarb pie. Sweet. A 2020 Pushcart Prize nominee, 2020 Best of the Net nominee, and 2020 Best New England Crime Stories finalist, John Mara is a multi-genre writer who tends to converse in the genre he's thinking about and makes better company when it's humor, not horror. Besides Tall Tale TV, you can find John's 20-plus short stories published in Liquid Imagination, J.J. Otre Review, Youth Imagination, and other venues. For links to his other Tall Tale TV appearances, check the description below. Hey guys, this is definitely one of the more racy stories I've ever had on the channel, but I love all the euphemisms, and the concept is top-notch. I can only hope that Morty and Gert get exactly what they deserve in Boca Raton, but I'm assuming that's a story for a different day. And if you did like it, make sure to definitely check out the other stories by John Mara. The guy is hilarious. He's got quite a few on the channel now. And of course, before you leave, be sure to leave a thumbs up or a comment if you're on YouTube or Facebook. Or if you're listening to the podcast version, I can always use more reviews over on Apple Podcasts. I'm Chris Herron, and that's it for today's Tall Tale TV.